Hi everybody, happy Thursday. Hope you're having a great day. I'm going to show you some famous self-portraits. I'm going to try my best to speak clearly. I'm having trouble. I'm going to articulate to the best of my ability. We're starting off with the most famous painting, the most famous portrait, without a doubt, in Western culture. And some people believe that it may be a self-portrait. Is it a self-portrait? I don't know. Nothing I say is the gospel truth. I'm just sharing some ideas with you, some theories that different art historians have. One is that Leonardo painted himself as a woman. So the image is both male and it's female. When you do stare at that face, at first you assume it's a smile, but when you look at it a little longer, it could be a frown. So you can turn that frown upside down. You can have happiness and sadness. It's like a mirror because of the way that the face is shaded using something called chiaroscuro. That it's, if you are happy, it looks happy. If you're sad, it looks sad. Here's a superimposed self-portrait sketch of Leonardo on that face, which could probably work with other faces too. Also, Ammon is a Egyptian god of fertility, god, male. Isis is a goddess, an Egyptian goddess of fertility. Ammon le Isa is how you would say Ammon and Isis together. Hence the name Mona Lisa. Is a theory. It's just a theory. Another reason that people believe that Mona Lisa may be a self-portrait is Leonardo liked to paint himself in his paintings. He liked to sneak himself in there. Here he is as one of the 12 apostles at the Last Supper, Thaddeus. That is a self-portrait. On the far left is St. Bartholomew. We'll talk about him later. Another interesting theory, at least most people don't believe this. They think that the person next to Jesus is a young man, the Apostle John, who was very young. But it does kind of look like a woman. So other people say, you know what, that's Mary Magdalene. And she was Jesus' right-hand man, but she was a woman. And Jesus was like the first feminist kind of. And that she was going to take over the ministry from Peter, who's next to her going like this threatening kind of action. Anyway, the negative space between the two of them makes a triangle that points downward. That is known as the chalice. A chalice is a cup. It's supposed to symbolize the female womb, whereas the blade, which is a triangle that points up, is supposed to symbolize male. The blade is like a phallus. Okay? And when the chalice and the phallus come together, you get something called the Star of David, which is like in the Judeo-Christian tradition, it's essentially like yin and yang, or the yin-yang symbol, male and female together, dark and light, active, passive, good, evil. The union of opposites. It's a popular theme in a lot of art. And so, but that's just a theory about this painting. Excellent use of linear perspective. Do you see how we'll get to that in a second. Okay, there's another reason that some people believe that there are actually 14 people is there's an extra hand. I just circled it. The hand is holding a dagger. The dagger might symbolize the blade, male, right? Or it may also show that there's somebody who's, it could be Judas, it could be a harbinger of some sort of violence. But some people, like I said, believe that Peter is doing this thing with it's kind of like this to Mary Magdalene. Because Peter means the rock, and he is the foundation of the modern Catholic Church. Again, just theories, somewhat interesting. And keep in mind, Leonardo painted this 1,500 years after the Last Supper. He wasn't there. This is not a photograph. It's art. He's expressing something. He's expressing ideas. Now here's an American artist named Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol liked to use stencils and repeat the same image over and over and over and over and over again. He was making a statement about the modern world, mass production. Henry Ford and the assembly line and the Industrial Revolution and the world that we live in now. He was also the person who coined the expression that in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. Your so-called 15 minutes of fame. That comes from Andy Warhol. This is another American artist named Jean-Michel Basquiat. I believe his father or grandfather was from Haiti, hence the French name. And here he is painting himself kind of in a cartoony way next to his buddy Andy Warhol. They were good friends. Another American artist from Pennsylvania, American USA, is Mary Cassatt. And this looks like a really nice, pleasant painting, but it was extremely offensive. The Impressionists really offended people because instead of painting kings and queens and wealthy merchants and nobility, they painted everyday, ordinary people. Here's Mary and her daughter. She painted herself with her daughter. Just common people. You can't do that. It was offensive. Okay, anyway. Frida Kahlo, one of my favorite artists. And she did a lot of self-portraits. And expressed some dark human feelings. You could paint yourself as a anthropomorphic character with a human head or part human, part animal. You could also do a parody like Salvador Dali right here. He put his face on Mona Lisa. It got cropped, but there's other stuff going on in the picture as well with what he's doing with his hands and grasping at the coins. This is also Salvador Dali. He, most people say Dali, Salvador Dali, but I was corrected because I had a foreign exchange student and she was from Spain and she said, I like Dali and Picasso because they're Spanish and they are great. Anyway, that's a self-portrait of Dali. Right? That's him without a skull. It's just, isn't that gross? It's just skin. Speaking of gross and just skin, there's St. Bartholomew. Michelangelo, when he was painting the ceiling, the Sistine Chapel ceiling, which he did not want to be doing, 3 years on his back painting a ceiling, and he hated painting. He was a sculptor. I shouldn't say hate, but he would have rather been sculpting. So when he was painting the Last Judgment, he put himself in HE double hockey stick because that's how he felt. And not only is he in because there's heaven and hell in the Last Judgment, but he put himself as St. Bartholomew, who was martyred, had his skin cut off. So he's holding his own skin and the dagger that was used. Troubling Michelangelo from the Renaissance. Now, boy, these are all kind of disturbing and violent things that have happened to these people. Okay, so chopped his ear off. Some people believe that it was a fight with his friend Paul Gauguin, who is also a painter, and somebody was messing around with a sword and he got his ear cut. And other people believe that he cut it off on purpose and mailed it to his sweetheart to show that he was ready to listen. I don't know. Are any of these things true? I have no idea. I'm just sharing stories that I've heard. Here's another Frida Kahlo. You can see that she's showing herself kind of in between two worlds. The ancient sort of the Aztec step pyramids, mastaba, and that culture, and then also the influence of the Industrial Revolution and Western culture and mass production, Ford, the assembly line again, and being mestizo, being Native American, but also being a peninsulare, I believe is what they call it, from Spain or Portugal. And that is, as is the case with many people from Latin America. Here is a Belgian fella named Rene Magritte, and he liked to use levitation. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to get into it because I don't think I have time. But when you see these levitating objects, that's probably Rene Magritte. And I just think it's funny because he put a big apple in front of his face. Georges Seurat I think is how you say his name. But Mrs. Tzakis, if you had her, always used to say Surat or Surat the dot, because he made all these little dots. All these little dots. And originally that was him looking at his girlfriend, and then somebody said that looks weird, so he turned it into flowers. But I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a little face in there. That's a self-portrait of Georges Seurat. All right. Rembrandt van Rijn. Most people just say Rembrandt because it's easier. The Prodigal Son, The Prodigal Son is a story where a father gives money to two sons, gives them their inheritance, and one goes off and wastes it foolishly, drinking, partying, and then. But anyway, so he painted himself as the prodigal son. Ooh, I love this dude. Courbet was known as the founder of a realism, like a neo-realism, where again, like Impressionism, and the Impressionists were inspired by this fellow right here. It was real people, ordinary, so-called real people. It wasn't the aristocracy or the real rich people or kings or queens. It was just ordinary people, and it was real, not idealized expressions. So you might remember from middle school and from math class even, and from 4th grade or 5th grade doing tessellations. That is M.C. Escher. So here he is, just the technical know-how to pull that off. It's insane. But there he is, painting his reflection in a reflective sphere. Another Frida Kahlo. Sorry, but she's just one of my favorites. And also, disturbing, but a very famous self-portrait, The Two Fridas, 1939. Also a fantastic film called Frida, starring Selma Hayek, if you ever get a chance to check it out. Norman Rockwell was a commercial artist, illustrator for a magazine called the Saturday Evening Post. And isn't this, do you see that up in the corner? That's Rembrandt, who we just looked at earlier. That's a famous self-portrait of Rembrandt. So he's painting himself, drawing himself, painting himself, looking at himself. Kind of a cool idea. Maybe you could do something like that. David Hockney is known for the use of collage and found objects. That means found objects is the way that artists say junk. So you just find some junk lying around, you put it together, assemblage. And some of you may have done a similar project based on David Hockney with Mr. Sandstrom in Art 2D. Pablo Picasso, self-portrait facing death. He died in 1973. So this is a year before he died. Picasso, as you may or may not remember, was a child prodigy. So he could paint like Rembrandt when he was when he was 12, 13 years old, but he said it took him the better part of his adult life to learn how to paint like a small child. Okay, we're almost done. This has been long, hasn't it? Is anybody still watching? If you're not, hey, I don't blame you. South Park. Is that Trey? Yes, a self-portrait. And South Park is a hugely successful show. Is it true that maybe they honestly just can't draw that well, or maybe they're doing it on purpose? But it has character. It's got character, and I love it. All right, and here's another local artist, Joe Heller, who is the editorial cartoonist for the Green Bay Press Gazette. But his cartoons were syndicated all over the country. And here he is, drawing himself as one of the Simpsons. So you might want to try something like that yourself. Okay, that was a long one. Hope you have a great day. Adios.